All right, I got one about Reverend Steve Porter, and I had visited Elaine Conley over in Sandy Hook. They had that hardware store.
Yeah.
Reverend Steve Porter would be her great-grandpa. She had this story. Now, Steve Porter, he's the one that founded Fairview Methodist Church. It was right here, donated the land right here in 1887. Then he ended up moving to Wisconsin around 1908, and he pastored a couple Methodist churches up there. But I asked her what kind of man was Steve Porter. She said, I believe he must have been a good man. He was a regulator. Have you guys heard of the Regulators?
Yeah.
Alex and Levi was regulators too. I've heard they whooped people, but they ought to have been whooped themselves. I don't know. I just know what people told me, you know.
Yeah. What'd you hear about Levi being a regulator?
Well, he whooped his own boy once, him and Alex, and he said, that boy said he knowed Uncle Alec hit him, said somebody whooped me left-handed, and said he knowed Pap hit him, he said he couldn't get a far leg. He couldn't say I've heard my dad tell that. They went somewhere one night, and Alec was riding a young horse, and it broke loose, and he couldn't find it. He went back the next day, and that some fellow there where he found it said, that looks like a regulator horse. He said, Alex said if it was, I wouldn't take $1,000 for it. That's my dad. I've listened to him tell them tales.
The horses wore hoods, too, is what I heard, so that they wouldn't recognize the horse. I never thought about that, but you guys know about horses. Is it true that you can tell different horses apart?
Oh, yeah.
You could recognize their face?
You can tell a lot of them just for their head, you know.
Okay.
And everybody knowed who's everybody else's horse was, I'd say, back then.
Okay.
Because, you know, that's on, they wouldn't know but just riding a horse or a wagon.
So they would want to cover the horse's face for that reason, so you couldn't identify
I
it.
reckon their first warning was they throwed switches on your porch to begin with, wasn't it? And if you didn't straighten up, why, you got the switches.
Well, I had never heard that Steve was in the Regulators.
I never either. I thought Levi and Alec was the only two was in it.
Yeah. Well, she said he was a regulator. Grandma, that'd be Olive Greene, Steve's daughter.
That's what's his name at church, Dr. Greene. That's his family.
Yes.
We go to church with
Mickey.
Mickey Greene.
Okay.
We go to church with him.
They have several doctors in that
A
family.
bunch of them doctors.
Because I thought, why are there so many doctors in this family? This grandma, Olive Greene, her husband died, the father-in-law. He ended up getting a loan to send these kids to college to become doctors. I think maybe one of them became a lawyer and a couple of them became doctors. But right there's where it was. It was this father-in-law that thought far enough ahead to borrow that money. He loved those grandkids enough to make sure they made it through college, and then that passed down, their kids, their grandkids. I forget how many doctors are in that family.
His kids are doctors too, I think.
Well, these two dentists and one doctor and Olive's grandkids.
Okay.
As Cody Greene's
Yeah.
boys.
Okay.
Frank was a doctor and Billy and Delmaine was dentists. And the woman married Blackie Conley, their sister, and Conley's story.
Yeah. So that's Elaine Conley here. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad used to, every time he'd go to Sandy Hook, he'd stop and see Olive.
Oh, really?
Big, I guess his first cousins. I don't know how much, but they were pretty close kin.
Right.
And he liked to talk anyway.
I wish I could have talked to your dad. So Olive, she said, yeah, he rode with the Regulators. So here's the big news. One time he started home, and she said a ball of fire took on behind him, and it rolled home with him. And he never would go out regulating anymore. I thought, wow, I never heard, I didn't even know he was in the Regulators, and then somebody sending him a message with this ball of fire. Was that God telling him, Steve, get out of the Regulators, boy?
Get out of the Regulators and become a preacher.
Yeah.
Somebody was telling him, wasn't he?
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to think that's what it was. I don't know. I wouldn't think it'd be Satan rolling after him with the ball of fire, trying to scare him out of the Regulator.
Satan would have been encouraging him.
Yeah. Well, But she went on to tell about, I said, well, what are the regulators? And she said they would go around whipping people. They hung 2 up here in the courthouse. She's referring to Sandy Hook. She said Grandpa Steve Porter rode with the regulators until the ball of fire rolled behind him, and he never did go back anymore.
I wouldn't either if I'd been him.
So that might be when Steve Porter changed directions.
Maybe.
Well, what I've always heard, he was the best one of the whole clan.
Yeah.
He was the most honest and best one. The rest of them was the meanest a lot, from what I've heard.